I'm learning more and more as I go. So, the last couple episodes, we've been talking about intentions. We've been talking about things you can do to create powerful intentions to manifest things that you want to bring out. And, I was thinking about it. It really is no different than what a lot of production or development, manufacturing, what they do. Because everybody just starts out with an idea, they draw some plans up, they figure out how to do it, they experiment a little bit. Ooh, experimentation, that's also good. And sometimes things go pretty smoothly. Hopefully, they go really smoothly. But a lot of times they don't. And things can get really challenging. And that's where this video actually comes in, because I was thinking about it. One of the last things I said is that, if you have grit is, that component that actually nails things down. And yeah, it's good to have intentions, but unless you have the wherewithal or the perseverance and the passion to do it, those intentions usually don't see the light of day. And another thing I wanted to actually correct from the last video was the book Grit was actually not from Robert Greene. I was conflating that with Mastery. I was required to read that in my master's degree. I think Grit was actually what I needed to read in my bachelor's degree. Either way, we're talking about it now because it made an impact, and it actually exposed to me some of the components that I was already doing, and it helped me actually be more intentional about developing it more so I could apply it in the rest of my life. And I was going to have to develop it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So Grit, the book, it's called Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. I'll drop a link down below. Go check it out, read it, get it on Audible or something. So let's talk about, what it is. What exactly is grit? So grit ends up being kind of a unique combination of passion and perseverance. And it's, interestingly enough, a better predictor of success than IQ. And there's a definite psychology behind grit that has an impact on achieving long-term goals. Short-term goals, not really, but long-term goals, long, challenging journeys that you're going to take in order to achieve something, you definitely need grit. And the reason why is because the gratification of success doesn't come as instantly. So we'll cover, we'll get a better understanding of what grit is. We'll talk about the components of grit, talk about what you can do to develop grit. Hopefully through this, you'll see grit in action. And then I think we'll cover with how we can help others develop grit in themselves. So let's jump right in. So what are the components again? The components of grit are passion and perseverance. So passion in the context of grit is a consistent and enduring interest in something. It's not fleeting. It continues. So let's say you have an interest in playing the guitar. You actually buy a guitar. You play with it for a little bit, and you all of a sudden decide that it's really hard to play. Hurts your fingers. It's annoying. Kind of speaking from personal experience. And I mean, I have a guitar right here. Do I know how to play? I can play basic stuff, but am I really agile on it? No. Am I passionate about a guitar? No. But there is something that I am passionate about, which is, you can see it here, Capoeira. I'm also passionate about music, but Capoeira is something a little bit more challenging, especially for me. Because in the very beginning, I kind of sucked. Like, I see earlier videos of myself and they make me cringe. So there's an enduring interest in something. It's not fleeting. It doesn't just go when things get tough. And in order to to have this thing called grit, you really need that component. You need to have a passion for something. And you might want to do an inventory of the things that you're passionate about. There's a number of ways of finding these things. Maybe we can do another video on that to take a deep dive. But right off the top, some of the things that I'm thinking of are taking an inventory of the things you do just because you like doing them, not because you have to, but you like doing them. Things that maybe you don't get a reward for, things you do even if nobody's listening. So, like in the very beginning, I made beats and music for myself. I made things, I don't know, it just made me feel better. There were things that, you know, situations in my life that I didn't really like or wasn't happy with. But the only thing I felt like I could control was the sounds coming out of that keyboard. Not that one, but a keyboard and the sounds that my computer made. And I liked them. So I kept doing it. So take an inventory of those things. Don't really exclude them yet. One of those things you have to do once you take an inventory is kind of nurture those things. You might already be doing it, but you need to nurture your passions, because if you don't, later on in life, you'll probably regret it. And some of these passions might actually just start with an interest. So I was interested in capoeira when I was a kid. I got a taste of it, but it didn't become a passion of mine, I wouldn't say, until I was older, a lot older, like my 30s. And I'll tell you, the passion that I have for it has just grown over the years. I teach it now. I go to Brazil every year. And interestingly enough, I remember hearing some sort of comment to one of my colleagues about the choice that we were making, especially the group that I'm in. Something to the extent of, like, why choose a losing team? And I look back and I was like, well, you know what? I don't know. I think there's some big payoff in choosing the harder road. Now, I got to be careful with this because, to be honest, you can be gritty and be passionate about something and have perseverance and it be a sinking boat. I've done that before. It's led to a layoff, but overall, that was probably one of the best things that happened to me, because it's happened a couple times to me, but they've always led to something better. And we'll talk about that a little later. But you definitely need to know what your passions are, right? The other component or ingredient, of course, as captured in the title of the book, is perseverance. And that really just means sticking with it, not just, for a couple days or a couple months, but day in and day out. And in the case that I just gave you about, the decision that I made, the road that I chose for capoeira, I've chosen this road for the last 4 years, specifically with the group that I'm in now, 4 or 5 years. It's actually like 5 now. And I think my growth has been, I appreciate it more because it hasn't come easy. And so it's definitely made me gracious for the things that come from the decisions that I've made. So you have to have passion. The other thing is, again, perseverance. And there's the concept of the growth mindset. And this is a shout out to Colossus Private School. I teach a class there once a week. And the principal Melissa, she's really adamant about teaching this to her students. And I love that. And when you apply this concept of, and I think Carol Dweck, and you link it to perseverance, and you highlight how believing in the potential for growth, when you actually think that the circumstances will become better or more like what you want to bring about, it's a lot easier to really put in the work, to give 110% for a bit. So that's perseverance. So passion plus perseverance equals grit, according to Angela Duckworth. So what are some of the things that we can do to develop this? Can we even develop it? People with brown eyes, have a little bit more grit. And the truth is actually there are three things that we can put into play to really help develop grit within ourselves. The the first thing is just practice, right? You need to be able to deliberately have that intention to improve the skills that you have and overcome plateaus. Get outside your comfort zone, do the work, and you need to practice doing those things. It might be strange, but seeing those things as part of the practice and then choosing to make actively making the choice to overcome those plateaus takes practice. Sometimes we shy away from those things. So deliberate practice, setting goals, very specific. We talked about that in the last video. The only new thing I would say that we didn't discuss in the last video about this is the importance of getting feedback. And that can go both ways. It can be a positive feedback that helps stimulate us to go forward. It could be negative, it could be critical. And we have to be very careful with how we let those things affect us. But if we kind of reframe things, and we'll talk about this in a second, but getting that feedback and using it will help us become better at applying the skills. Kind of like the lean concept of build, measure, learn. So you build it, you measure it, you learn. That's the essence of practice. You do, you get feedback, you get better. Another way you can catalyze or expedite the development of grit is connecting it to something that you have a deep or a profound personal interest in, something like a larger purpose, something altruistic. And I'll give you an example. This is a personal one. So, in the beginning of the pandemic, I started working for a company, Deepak Chopra, Chopra Global, and I was tasked to build a mobile application meditation app. And coming in, I was under the idea that we would have a team. The team ended up just being me and another developer. And the things that we did in that time were pretty crazy. Like, I'm actually, and this is not to toot my own horn, but it's to illustrate once you connect something, and this kind of goes back to the last video when you connect your goals to your values. So I believed in what we were doing. We had a bigger cause. We're delivering a mechanism of dealing with the stress and the emotional distress of the pandemic through meditation. And it helped me push through the 60, 80-hour weeks because we were on a mission to get this out to help as many people. So when you connect with a purpose, and the larger the purpose, the more motivation, the more fuel you're going to get from that purpose. So I'd think about what your own goals are, and especially in the context of broader impacts and contributions to others. Are you making those? And as a matter of fact, a friend just shared something with me today about, them wanting to help kids. We connected on that and how they're actually doing something to represent or to assist children in need that may not have an advocate or a way to communicate. And that's a powerful thing. So find your purpose or a purpose you can connect to. And, one thing I'll say is, that app that I was building, it actually kind of leads into the next thing that you can do or that you'll need to kind of develop it. But so I made the app. Pandemic, it'd been out for a while. The pandemic had kind of loosened up a little bit, at least the restrictions. And so Chopra decided to do a on-site, like a retreat for all the hard work. Everybody, it was a small team, a small and mighty team. And we did a lot of stuff. And this was kind of like a way to allow us to decompress and really just celebrate the things that we had done together. And then it was the same weekend. The same weekend, there was another retreat, an actual retreat for for customers in a meditation retreat. And of course, I go to that because I want to learn and just kind of see the fruits of all the things that we've been working for. And I mentioned in practice, right? In that the section, the topic of practice, you need to get feedback. That's how you get better. And so I like to get feedback. And so I just randomly asked this lady if she used the app while we were waiting in line. And she said she did. And I was like, oh, cool. It's like, what do you think about it? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, very genuinely, she responded to me. She's like, this app is the reason why I'm here. And I was really curious. I was like, oh, what do you mean? She was like, during the pandemic, I got really depressed and, I contemplated suicide. And I felt this weird, like warm feeling in my heart, like kind of sad and, this compassion for her. And she said that her cousin had sent some meditations from YouTube from Deepak Chopra. And then she looked for an app that she could use every day. And it was the app that we developed. And she said she listened to it every day. And it's pretty much the reason why she's still alive. Now, I had remembered the last job I worked at before. I was helping people order hamburgers while they're waiting in line at a theme park. And I'd stress out about that. But stressing out and, working crazy hours, like 80 hours a week, and then knowing that you're doing it for that. And she said the app gave her hope, which is actually the last thing that you need to help develop grit. Hope and optimism. So a right attitude about setbacks and things that get in your way. And there's a lot of things you can do to cultivate kind of like a resilient and positive mindset. One of those things you can do is reframe. The other thing you can do is, just really kind of visualize success, even though you're not there. Sometimes when you experience a setback, you can really just kind of spiral down. And if you don't make an active attempt to remember, to re-envision what success is, why you're doing it, and maybe reframe the situation a little bit. So for example, in the last video, I recorded like a 30-minute video, accidentally deleted it, or I don't know what happened. Still got to watch out for that. But instantly I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm going to record a better video. So that's that optimism, that hope, the reframing of it. You could focus on, oh, man, I just wasted all that time. Or you could then reframe it as like, oh, well, I got a practice round. And that helps you kind of push forward. So, there's many examples of, gritty people. I mean, pretty much any success story requires grit, especially the success stories that met adversity. And I'm pretty sure you can think of some people, somebody has to come to mind. And I would encourage you to get the book because the book does a really, really good job of outlining, stories that are, very inspiring. And you can draw lessons from those examples and apply those into your own life. So I think the last section that we'll cover is how we can actually, once we have built this in ourselves, how do we help others develop it? How can we as parents or educators or leaders inspire others to develop grit that we have an impact? Some of the things I could think about are, it's interesting, maybe setting a high standard. It's kind of like when you exercise, right? If you only do the weight that's easy for you, you're not going to get stronger. So you always have to kind of push the bar, literally, pun intended, right? I think another thing we can do, aside from offering high standards, is, or maybe even with offering high standards, is offering support and guidance. Because it can be very tricky. When you're kind of doing something that's hard, you can build up frustration. You can build up a lot of negative thoughts, especially when you're facing a lot of setbacks. So it's pretty important to be there as a guide to people once you've learned how to do it yourself. And I think that goes a long way. And the last way I think is modeling gritty behavior. And all of these things are illustrated in the book, right? These are topics that the book will cover. And it becomes a natural thing for you to do. Once you see the benefit of what you've been able to accomplish, you look back and you're like, yeah, this is because I dug down deep and really pushed myself. You're going to want to be able to inspire others to do the same thing. And I swear it's because of grit I've been able to get to where I'm at. And I've learned the things, I've experienced the things that I have. So just to summarize all of this stuff, especially when it comes down to long-term goals. For example, I'm pretty sure we had to read this book in the first, or part of this book in the first class in my bachelor's degree. That's 36 months of classes. It's a pretty long journey. And it's very smart of them to have us read that for their first book, because it really outlined the things that you would need to be successful. And, with the school that I go to, or that I went to, Full Sail University, Winter Park, Florida, dope school, not for everybody. You need some grit to get through it. But if you have it going into it and you have it going out, you're definitely going to be successful, hands down. If you're not, then you're going to probably waste your money. And that's as honest as I can be, regarding that school. It will get you there fast, but you have to apply yourself. There are no like shortcuts to that. When you're doing things that are extremely challenging or long term, grit is essential. And I would encourage you to, if you're looking to build more grit in your own life, start with, again, taking a survey of the things that you're passionate about, maybe setting a challenging goal to yourself and just observing yourself. Maybe see your temptations of quitting. Maybe witness your internal dialogue when you're considering giving up on that goal. I can't help but to think about the guitar. And then maybe even look at something in your life that reminds you of the gritty things, the gritty nature that you already have in certain circumstances, and really try to distill those things. What did it take? Did you believe in yourself in that aspect? Maybe you can extract that and build a framework and apply that to other parts of your life in different ways. The other thing is really look into, I think it's Carol Dweck's concept of growth mindset. So that's all I got. I figured it's really important to really talk about the keys of execution, especially in the face of, adversity. And yeah, so thank you for watching and listening. Definitely like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and definitely don't forget to read or check out Angela Duckworth's book on grit. Grit, the power of passion and perseverance. It's a good read. Thanks again, and I'll see you around.